Friends, if you're someone who enjoys high-stakes thrillers, intense mind games, and films that grip your attention from the very first second to the very last frame, then The Wall, 2017, is the perfect movie for you. And if this is your very first time visiting our channel, I want to warmly welcome you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we bring you the most exciting movie updates, reviews, and breakdowns that you won't want to miss. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into a movie that might not have a massive cast or giant explosions, but still manages to create nail-biting tension and psychological suspense like few others can. The movie I'm talking about is The Wall, a gripping war drama that takes a minimalist approach but delivers maximum impact. With just a few characters, a single setting, and a deadly sniper hiding in the shadows, this film turns the desert into a battlefield of nerves, patience, and survival. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is this movie about? Who stars in it? Where can you watch it? And what makes it different from all the other war movies out there? Don't worry, because in this video, I'll be answering all those questions and more. I'll be telling you what the film is about without giving away any spoilers, and I'll also explain where you can find this movie, whether it's on an OTT platform like Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, or any other streaming service, or if it's available on a satellite TV channel. I'll guide you through all the options so you can choose the best way to watch it. But that's just the beginning. We're going to take a detailed look at the technical side of the movie as well, how it was made, who was behind the camera, and how the filmmakers used simplicity to their advantage. We'll talk about the direction by Doug Liman, who's known for his work on action-packed films, but took a very different approach with The Wall. We'll explore the cinematography, the use of sound, the sharp editing, and even the way the silence is used as a tool to build tension. Every detail in this movie has been carefully crafted to keep you on edge. We'll also go behind the scenes and talk about the pre-production phase, how the film was planned, how the concept was developed, and what kind of challenges the team faced while shooting in a harsh desert environment. Then we'll move into the production itself. Where was it filmed? What kind of equipment was used? And how did the actors prepare for such physically and emotionally demanding roles? After that, we'll get into post-production, how the film was edited, how the sound design was completed, and how the final touches brought the story to life. Of course, we'll also touch on the budget of the film, how much it cost to make this minimalist thriller, and we'll see how it did at the box office. Was it a commercial success? Did it win over the critics and the audience? I'll give you all the details and a balanced perspective on its reception. And speaking of the story, we're going to explore the plot in a way that gives you a full understanding without spoiling the surprises. The Wall isn't your typical war film. It's more of a psychological chess match between a soldier and an unseen enemy. It's about patience, strategy, and the human mind under extreme pressure. I'll give you a brief but powerful summary of the story, and I'll also share my personal review, what I liked, what stood out, and why I think it's worth watching. We'll then move on to the cast, led by Aaron Taylor-Johnson and WWE superstar John Cena, and talk about their performances in the film. You'll learn which actor played which role, how they brought their characters to life, and what makes their performances so memorable. I'll also talk about the voice behind the enemy sniper and how that role adds a whole new layer to the film's suspense. And just when you think that's all, wait, there's more. I'll also be sharing some cool facts and trivia about The Wall. Did you know the film was shot in just a few weeks? Or that the entire story takes place in real time? I'll reveal fascinating behind-the-scenes stories, insights into the filmmaking process, and maybe even a few things that only true fans of the film have noticed. So, friends, I invite you to stick with me until the very end of the video. There's a lot to learn, a lot to enjoy, and who knows, by the time we're done, you might be even more excited to watch The Wall than you were before. Whether you're a fan of war movies, psychological thrillers, or just love a well-crafted story that keeps you guessing, this film has something special for you. All right, friends, grab your snacks, sit back, and get ready. Because we're about to step into the intense, sun-scorched battlefield of The Wall, 2017. Let's begin. Plot and narrative. All right, friends, let's dive into the intense, nerve-wracking desert nightmare that is The Wall, and trust me, this is no ordinary war movie. Forget the huge battle scenes, forget tanks rolling across the battlefield, and definitely forget any backup arriving with a dramatic soundtrack. This film strips everything down to its core: one wall, two soldiers, and one very smart, very deadly sniper. That's it. And somehow, with just those ingredients, it creates a psychological war story that keeps you glued to the screen. The story kicks off with two American soldiers, Sergeant Alan Isaac and Staff Sergeant Shane Matthews, sent into the middle of nowhere to investigate the aftermath of an attack on a pipeline construction site in Iraq. The place looks quiet. Too quiet. There are bodies lying around, equipment scattered, and a weird silence that tells you something's not right. The two soldiers, confident but cautious, start to examine the scene. Matthews goes in to check the area more closely, and boom, the first shot rings out. He goes down. Suddenly, we realize they're not alone. There's a sniper. And he's not just any sniper. He's hidden, patient, and incredibly accurate. Now Isaac, our main character, scrambles for cover behind a crumbling, waist-high wall, the only thing between him and certain death. And just like that, the title of the movie becomes crystal clear. It's not just the wall as a piece of scenery, it's the entire setting, the whole stage, the one piece of protection in a desert where there's nowhere else to hide. From this point on, the film becomes a high-stakes game of survival. And here's where it gets interesting. The enemy sniper, who's never seen on screen, starts talking to Isaac over the radio. His voice is calm, intelligent, and unnervingly polite. He knows things. He's clearly been watching them. And he's not just trying to kill Isaac physically, he's trying to break him mentally. Now we get into the real meat of the story. It's not about action, it's about psychology. It's a verbal chess match, and the sniper, who calls himself Juba, is always 2 moves ahead. Isaac is wounded, dehydrated, and exposed. His radio is barely working. His rifle is busted. He's bleeding out, he can't move, and his partner is lying motionless just a few feet away. All he has is the wall and his willpower. Every time he tries to think one step ahead, the sniper is already there, predicting his moves. And yet, Isaac doesn't give up. He listens. He talks back. He lies. He tries to trick Juba. He uses the radio, his environment, even the sniper's arrogance, anything he can to outlast him. What makes the narrative so gripping is how it plays with time and tension. There are no flashbacks, no cutaways, no grand shifts in location. The entire story unfolds in real time, which means we experience every agonizing second along with Isaac. There's no relief. You're trapped there with him. Every tiny sound, the wind, the crunch of sand, the click of a radio, feels like it could be life or death. And the pacing? Oh, it's ruthless. The film doesn't let up. It keeps you asking, what would I do? Would I survive? Would I outsmart the sniper? Or would I crumble under the pressure? Key turning points come not with explosions, but with moments of silence. A discovered wire. A trick in the conversation. A sudden realization that the enemy knows more than he should. The tension builds not from outside threats, but from within. Fear, doubt, exhaustion. And emotionally, that's what hits the hardest. You're watching a soldier who trained for war, but now faces a battle he never prepared for, a test of wit, endurance, and psychological strength. It's not about who has the biggest gun. It's about who breaks first. There's even a subtle commentary underneath all the action. The idea that war isn't always about clear victories or grand battles. Sometimes it's about one person stuck in the dirt, fighting not to win, but just to make it to the next moment. The sniper isn't a monster. He's educated. He's calculating, which somehow makes him scarier. And Isaac? He's just a guy doing his best to stay alive, inch by inch. So while the wall doesn't bounce around in time or throw us into elaborate backstories, it does something more powerful. It traps us in the moment. It experiments not with structure, but with silence, tension, and the unseen. The entire film is one long turning point. Every second feels like the next could be the last. And that, my friends, is what makes this film so different, so bold, and so unforgettable. It's not a story that moves, it's a story that holds you still, pins you down, and dares you to breathe. Character development. Let's talk characters, because in The Wall, it's not about how many people are on screen. It's about how deep they go. You've got basically three voices driving this entire movie: Isaac, Matthews, and Juba. That's it. Three characters, one dusty desert, and a wall that's falling apart as fast as everyone's sanity. But somehow, in this tight, minimalist setup, we get some of the most fascinating character dynamics packed into a single hour and a half. Let's start with Isaac. He's our main guy, and when we first meet him, he's not out there trying to be a hero. He's cautious. He's observant. And he's clearly tired, not just physically, but emotionally. He's a soldier who's seen things. There's a heaviness to him, a weariness that speaks of too many missions, too many losses. He's already halfway to broken before the sniper even fires the first shot. But don't mistake that for weakness. The beauty of Isaac's character is how he evolves under pressure. As soon as that bullet hits and Matthews goes down, Isaac shifts into survival mode. Not in a flashy, action movie way, but in a raw, gritty, desperate way. He's limping, bleeding, sweating, breathing like he's just run a marathon, and yet he keeps thinking. He keeps trying. He keeps fighting. His strength isn't in his fists or his aim. It's in his mind. And this is where his character really starts to grow. Because as the sniper starts talking to him, calmly, creepily, like a professor giving a lecture in the middle of a war zone, Isaac doesn't shut down. He listens. He talks back. He learns. At first, he's confused, caught off guard, trying to figure out who this voice belongs to. But soon, he starts to adapt. He tests Juba, lies to him, challenges him. We watch Isaac transform from a wounded soldier hiding behind a wall into a man who refuses to be mentally broken. And this transformation is slow, painful, and incredibly human. Every word he speaks, every breath he takes, shows us that he's not giving up, even when his chances look almost non-existent. Now, let's talk about Matthews, played by Cena. Yeah, he goes down early, but don't count him out. Through flash moments and faint interactions, we get glimpses of who he is: the confident, experienced leader, the one who usually has the answers. He's a strong presence, and even while unconscious or half-lucid, he still affects Isaac. Their relationship is complex. Matthews is the alpha, the one in charge, but he's also the one who's quick to dismiss the danger at first. That mistake costs him, and it forces Isaac to step out of the shadow. There's a brotherhood between them, hinted at through a few sharp lines and shared understanding. You feel the history. You sense the bond, even in silence. And then there's Juba. Oh yes, the voice on the radio. The ghost in the sand. The man with the sniper rifle and a voice so calm it could chill your bones. What's wild about Juba is that you never see him. Not once. And yet, he's one of the most well-developed characters in the film. Through his words alone, he reveals his intelligence, his confidence, his eerie sense of control. He's not just a faceless enemy, he's a philosopher, a manipulator, and a master of psychological warfare. He asks questions that dig into Isaac's soul. He speaks in riddles, quotes literature, toys with morality, and all the while, keeps his aim steady. Juba is the kind of villain who never yells, never rants, never loses his cool, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. He's not just trying to kill Isaac. He wants to unravel him. The dynamic between Isaac and Juba becomes the centerpiece of the film. It's a psychological duel. Each word is a move. Each pause is a trap. As the film progresses, you see Isaac's fear start to shift into defiance. You see Juba, though always calm, begin to sense he may have underestimated his target. The tension between them creates a fascinating balance. One man with a rifle and the high ground, the other with nothing but a crumbling wall and a will to live. What makes the character development in The Wall so unique is that it doesn't rely on long backstories or dramatic monologues. Instead, it peels back layers through interaction, stress, and silence. You learn who these people are not by what they say, but how they respond when everything goes wrong. Isaac becomes more than just a soldier. He becomes a symbol of human resilience, of quiet determination. Juba becomes more than a sniper. He becomes the embodiment of fear, of the unknown enemy. And Matthews, even while down, remains a reminder of what's at stake. So while this film may be physically small, its characters are anything but. It's like a psychological boxing match, tight ring, only a few punches thrown, but every hit lands exactly where it hurts. You're not just watching a story unfold. You're watching minds clash, break, resist, and survive. And in the middle of it all, you're holding your breath, wondering who's going to outlast the other, not just in body, but in spirit. Performances. All right, let's talk about the lifeblood of The Wall, the performances. Because in a movie where you've got a grand total of 3 voices and basically one visible actor doing all the heavy lifting, the performances don't just matter. They are the movie. There are no car chases to distract you, no explosions to keep the energy up, no crowd scenes to fill the space. This film is carried on the back of raw, stripped down, emotionally intense acting. So let's break it down. Front and center, we've got Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Sergeant Alan Isaac. And let me tell you, this guy delivers a masterclass in how to act under pressure, literal, physical, and emotional pressure. Most of the time, he's lying in the dirt behind a collapsing wall with a bullet in his leg, sunburn on his skin, blood soaking through his clothes, and a sniper talking to him like a sinister radio host. Yet somehow, through all that, he keeps you completely locked in. It's not just what he says, it's how he breathes, how his eyes dart, how his body reacts to every sound. You feel his panic, his frustration, his flashes of hope and crushing disappointment. It's all there, layered into every movement. And the thing is, he doesn't have anyone to bounce off visually. He's talking into a radio. He's reacting to a voice. He's completely isolated, yet never once does it feel like he's performing in a vacuum. His energy fills the screen. His pain feels real. His transformation, from a soldier barely hanging on to a man determined not to be broken, is done with such precision and vulnerability that you stop seeing Aaron Taylor Johnson the actor. You just see Isaac the survivor. Now, let's move on to John Cena as Staff Sergeant Matthews. And before you start picturing him body-slamming bad guys or running through explosions like in his action roles, pause that thought. This isn't the loud, superhero version of Cena. This is a more grounded, restrained, almost haunting performance. Matthews is the more confident soldier, the one who strides into the scene early on like he's got it all figured out. He's experienced.
He's calm.
But then, bang, down he goes. And for the rest of the film, he's either unconscious, barely conscious, or drifting in and out. But even then, Cena leaves a mark. Through just a few lines of dialogue, some scattered memories, and moments of pain and confusion, he adds emotional weight to Isaac's struggle. There's a brotherhood there, a sense of loss. And when he speaks groggy, barely hanging on, you feel the desperation. It's a performance that could have been forgettable in someone else's hands, but Cena makes it matter. He adds heart to the tension. And now for the real wild card, the voice of the enemy sniper, Juba, played by Laith Nackley. You never see him, not even a glimpse. But somehow, he manages to be one of the most haunting, charismatic, and unnerving characters in the film. That voice, it's calm, educated, unnervingly polite, like a villain who could also be your philosophy professor. There's no yelling, no anger. Just control. Total, absolute control. Nackley's performance is a masterclass in voice acting. Through nothing but tone, rhythm, and a terrifyingly calm delivery, he turns Juba into a nightmare with a radio. He's chilling not because he's loud, but because he's the kind of enemy who enjoys the game. He studies Isaac. He taunts him. He plays mental chess. And every line he delivers pulls the tension tighter. It's like he's always one step ahead, and you're just waiting for the moment he pulls the trigger, not just on Isaac, but on your nerves. Together, these 3 performances form a triangle of tension, each one adding a different kind of energy. Aaron Taylor Johnson brings the grit and vulnerability. John Cena brings the weight of loss and comradeship. And Laith Nackley brings the dread, the intellect, the invisible presence that drives the entire plot. There are no crowd scenes, no filler characters, no distractions. Just these 3 voices, locked in a psychological standoff under the brutal sun, and every moment counts. What's most impressive is how still this film is, how quiet, how focused, and yet the performances never feel slow or empty. Every twitch, every breath, every word is loaded with stakes. And because it's so tightly focused, you start noticing the smallest details in their acting. The way Isaac swallows hard before lying, the way Juba pauses before delivering a particularly cruel truth, the way Matthews grits out a phrase like he's trying to fight through unconsciousness. So while the cast list may be short, the performances are anything but small. They're intense, layered, and surprisingly intimate. And in a film where every second feels like it could be the last, these performances are what keep you on the edge, heart pounding, eyes glued to the screen. Direction. Now, let's talk about the real puppet master behind the madness, the director of The Wall, Doug Liman. If you're expecting flashy editing, over-the-top action scenes, or a parade of dramatic slow-motion sequences, guess what? He leaves all of that behind. Instead, Liman goes full minimalist here, like a magician pulling off an incredible trick with nothing but a deck of cards, a spotlight, and complete silence. And somehow it works. In fact, it doesn't just work, it's gripping. Liman strips the story to its bare bones, then digs deep into the tension, the silence, and the claustrophobia of the moment. He doesn't rely on distractions or theatrics. He commits hard to the concept. Two soldiers, a sniper, one crumbling wall in the middle of a sun-scorched battlefield. That's it. It's the cinematic version of being locked in a room with someone watching you, and you have no idea where they are. Every shot, every pause, every breath is soaked in unease. That's not an accident. That's a director who knows exactly how to manipulate space and time to create pressure. Liman sets the tone from the first frame. The opening isn't some explosive ambush. It's quiet, observational, a bit eerie. You feel like something is wrong before anything even happens. And then, when the shot rings out, it's not a dramatic, drawn-out sequence. It's sudden, sharp, real. The camera drops to the ground along with the character. The pace tightens. The lens narrows in. You feel the trap snap shut, and you're stuck there with the characters. Liman doesn't let you breathe, not for a second. The pacing? Oh, it's genius. He builds the tension slowly, methodically. He doesn't rush anything. He lets the silence grow heavy. He lets the desperation rise. There are moments when nothing is happening, no dialogue, no movement, and yet your heart's racing because Liman has taught you that something could happen at any second. And when it does, it's never overplayed. A radio crackle, a distant voice, the sound of sand shifting. That's all it takes. And then there's the shot composition, tight, intimate, relentless. Liman loves close-ups in this film. Isaac's sweat-covered face, the jagged edges of the wall, the scorched ground that might as well be lava. The camera doesn't pan out for comfort. It stays close, almost too close, like the film is breathing down your neck. He makes the wall itself feel like a character, chipped, fragile, unreliable. And in contrast, the desert beyond is endless, empty, terrifying. That visual contrast becomes part of the story. Liman uses space as a weapon. You are either cramped in danger or exposed in danger. There is no safety zone. But the real power move? The way Liman directs the voice of the sniper. You never see Juba. Not once. But the way his voice is staged, the way it drifts in through the radio, clear and calm and perfectly timed, it becomes its own cinematic presence. Liman turns an invisible villain into something more menacing than any monster. He directs the radio like it's a horror element. You don't know when it will speak or what it will say, but when it does, it grabs your attention like a whisper in a haunted house. And that brings us to tone and mood. This film isn't loud, it isn't wild, but it is absolutely nerve-shredding. Liman sets a mood of isolation and paranoia so thick, you could slice it with a bayonet. He makes you feel the sun burning down, the dehydration setting in, the sand grinding in wounds. There's no music swelling to tell you how to feel. Liman trusts the silence. He trusts the breathing. He trusts the ticking clock. And he makes the audience part of the battlefield, not just a spectator. He also doesn't hand you easy answers. There are moments where you don't know if Isaac is hallucinating. Is that real? Is Matthews alive or not? Is Juba even where Isaac thinks he is? Liman plays with doubt like a pro. He keeps you second-guessing everything, and that uncertainty becomes part of the storytelling itself. So what you get with Liman's direction is not just a war film, it's a psychological trap. A quiet, intense, desert-bound thriller that never loses focus. Every stylistic choice, every pause, every inch of dusty ground is deliberate. He doesn't just show you what's happening, he locks you in it. You're behind the wall too. You're hearing the voice too. You're wondering if you'll make it out. And that's not easy to pull off. That's not just direction. That's precision. That's vision. That's Doug Liman turning simplicity into something seriously unforgettable. Cinematography. Let's dive into the gritty, sunburned, sand-choked world of The Wall, where the cinematography doesn't just help tell the story, it is the story. Roman Vazionov, the cinematographer behind the camera, takes what could have been a flat, dry desert shoot and turns it into a high-stakes visual chessboard. With nothing but one wall, 2 soldiers, and miles of empty landscape, he crafts a claustrophobic, paranoid, and nerve-twisting experience, all through camera angles, lighting, and framing that feel anything but simple. First off, the location. We're in the middle of nowhere. Literally. Dusty, dry, sun-bleached wasteland. You'd think there's not much you can do with that, right?
Wrong.
Vazionov uses the desert like a pressure cooker. Wide shots show the bleakness, this huge, empty, open space that should feel freeing, but instead feels like a giant bullseye. The sun is blaring, the heat is radiating, and that big sky above doesn't promise hope. It just reminds you how far away help really is. Then the camera flips. We go from wide, empty landscapes to tight, oppressive close-ups that almost make you feel like you're underneath the wall with Isaac. Every crack in the stone, every bead of sweat on his forehead, every fleck of sand in his blood feels personal. The framing doesn't let you relax. It boxes you in. Vazionov uses these close angles not just for detail, but for emotion. When Isaac breathes heavy, the camera breathes with him. When he panics, the camera shakes slightly. When he's scanning the horizon, the lens moves with purpose, slow, methodical, scared. You become his eyes. You're not watching him experience fear, you're in it with him. And let's talk about the lighting. This isn't a movie that hides in the shadows. The danger is right out in the blazing sun. There's no soft glow, no moody nighttime rescue. It's harsh, unforgiving daylight. And Vazionov uses that to crank up the tension. The sun becomes a kind of character in itself, relentless, exposing, brutal. There's nowhere to hide. Shadows are scarce. Even the little protection the wall offers is barely enough to escape the glare. That lighting makes everything feel raw and exposed. You see every cut, every drop of sweat, every painful inch of movement. But that's only part of the magic. Vazionov knows when to dial things in and when to pull back. There are moments where the camera lingers, just sits there, silently, waiting with the same anxiety Isaac is feeling. Maybe it's the stillness after a voice crackles on the radio. Maybe it's Isaac staring at a potential sniper location. The camera doesn't flinch. It stays still, letting that tension grow like a storm cloud in your stomach. And when something does finally happen, a gunshot, a sudden movement, a voice on the radio, it lands like a slap because the stillness before it was so deafening. There are some truly visually striking moments too. One that sticks out is when the sun hits Isaac's eye as he tries to peer past the wall. You get this flash of intensity, like the very environment is trying to blind him, make him vulnerable. Another? The way the heat distorts the air when you look into the distance, like the desert itself is hiding secrets in plain sight. And don't even get started on how the wall is shot. Sometimes it's framed like a lifeline, sometimes like a coffin lid, depending on what Isaac is going through. That one slab of concrete somehow tells its own story just by how the camera looks at it. And then there's the silence. Yes, silence has a look, and Vazionov captures it. Long, Still shots with minimal movement where the only thing really changing is the light shifting ever so slightly, like the desert is holding its breath. Those quiet moments, captured in simple but powerful frames, are when the tension spikes. You're just waiting for a bullet, a word, a breath. The cinematography isn't screaming at you, it's whispering in your ear and making you lean in, eyes wide. All of this adds up to a visual experience that's strangely hypnotic. For a movie that takes place in a single location with barely any movement, the wall feels constantly alive. The cinematography creates an atmosphere of dread, a visual tightrope where every frame threatens to break the tension. It makes the emptiness feel dangerous, the sun feel cruel, and the silence feel louder than gunfire. Roman Vazionov doesn't just show you what's happening. He traps you there with the characters, one dusty, sweaty, nail-biting frame at a time. Editing and pacing. Let's talk about the heartbeat of the wall, and by heartbeat, we mean editing and pacing. Because in a movie where you've only got one visible soldier, one invisible voice, and one stubborn wall, you better believe the rhythm of how it all unfolds is absolutely crucial. There are no big time jumps, no dramatic montage sequences, no rapid-fire scene changes to keep things flashy. Instead, what you get is a slow burn, but not the kind that lets you zone out and make popcorn. Oh no! This slow burn is more like a fuse winding toward an unpredictable detonation. The editing, handled with razor-sharp precision, is like a surgeon at work. Nothing feels sloppy. Nothing is excessive. Every cut has a purpose. Every scene bleeds into the next with a kind of quiet, lethal momentum. You don't even notice how tightly it's stitched together until you're halfway in and realize you haven't looked away once. It's one of those sneaky edits, the kind that doesn't draw attention to itself because it's doing its job perfectly. The flow is seamless. It moves like a desert snake, slow and silent, but always ready to strike. Now, here's the thing. You might think, with such a contained story, the pacing could easily drag. I mean, we're not bouncing between locations. We're not hopping timelines. It's one man behind a wall. But that's where the magic happens. The film somehow never feels slow. That's because the editors play with tension like a symphony. They know exactly when to let a moment stretch, when to hold on a face, and when to cut away just a second before you expect it. Sometimes the camera lingers just a little too long, and your nerves start to itch. Other times, it snaps to a new angle or slams you into a new beat, so fast you're caught off guard. That's the pacing keeping you on your toes, refusing to let you settle. There's this brilliant back-and-forth rhythm between action and stillness. A gunshot, then silence. A desperate movement, then stillness. A lie told over the radio, then waiting. It's not a traditional action film pace. It's more psychological warfare. You're trapped with Isaac, and the editing reflects his mindset. Early on, the pace is a bit more methodical, letting the audience sink into the setup, understand the landscape. But once the sniper starts talking, once the cat and mouse begins, the tempo shifts. The tension tightens. The cuts become a little quicker. The pauses become more loaded. You start anticipating something behind every silence. And the way the editing plays with sound or the lack of it is genius. Radio static, the crackle of Isaac's headset, the rasp of his breathing. The cuts are timed to these tiny sounds, which makes everything feel more immediate. There's one particularly intense moment where Isaac thinks he's found a way out, and the pacing picks up like the film is sprinting with him. Then, bam, reality hits, and the edit slams on the brakes. You feel the drop. The emotional whiplash is real, and that's all because of the way the rhythm is handled. The transitions between psychological pressure and physical danger are done so cleanly you barely notice them. 1 minute you're watching Isaac try to dig something out of his leg, gritting through the pain, and the next, you're back into a verbal chess match with the sniper, without a single jarring cut in between. It's like being yanked between two kinds of survival, and the pacing never lets you get comfortable in either. The editing also mirrors the passage of time in a subtle but smart way. There are no clocks, no calendars, but you feel the hours dragging by. The editors use light changes, fatigue in Isaac's voice, the buildup of dirt and blood, to show that time is crawling, and yet somehow flying, all at once. That strange duality, fast but slow, silent but deafening, still but urgent. That's the rhythm that The Wall rides all the way to its final beat. So while some might expect a high-octane, jump-cut-heavy war film, The Wall delivers something far more surgical. The editing keeps you tightly locked into Isaac's reality. The pacing refuses to give you room to breathe. And the rhythm? It's like a war drum played with a scalpel, sharp, deliberate, and always marching towards something you're not quite prepared for. Soundtrack and score. Let's talk about something you might not even notice while watching The Wall, and that's exactly the point. The soundtrack and score in this film don't announce themselves with loud fanfare or sweeping orchestral crescendos. Instead, they creep in like a shadow behind your thoughts, barely whispering, but always present. This is not a film that leans on music to guide your emotions. No dramatic violins when someone cries. No heroic theme swelling during a standoff. In fact, sometimes the most powerful musical decision this film makes is to use no music at all. Composer Marco Beltrami, known for turning tension into audio form, knows exactly when to let the score breathe and when to smother you with atmosphere. His work here is subtle, strategic, and stripped down, just like the rest of the film. Think of the music like a pressure gauge. You won't always hear it ticking, but when it rises, you feel it in your chest before your ears even catch on. It's less about melody and more about mood, sustained tones, eerie pulses, the kind of sound design that makes you feel like something's behind you even though the screen says otherwise. In The Wall, silence is one of the most powerful tools in the audio arsenal. There are long stretches where nothing plays at all, no ambient track, no background hum. Just wind, breathing, the distant buzz of flies, or the dry shuffle of dirt. And those moments, they're not empty, they're loaded. The absence of music turns the environment itself into a character. Every creak of Isaac's gear, every scrape of the rifle stock against the wall, every drop of sweat. You hear it all, and that makes everything feel 10 times more intense. Because when there's music, it hits harder. When the score does slide in, it's often with this almost subconscious texture, a low rumble, a faint drone, a tense little chord that hovers just below your awareness. It's like your own anxiety has a soundtrack. It builds under moments where Isaac is weighing a decision, trying to outsmart the sniper, or when time is ticking way too fast. The music doesn't tell you how to feel. It reminds you that danger is near, even when everything seems still. There's also a brilliant use of recurring sonic motifs, not melodies in the traditional sense, but certain sounds or tonal cues that repeat in moments of psychological strain. You'll hear a certain buzzing drone return whenever Isaac's hope is slipping. You'll hear a warped hum that shows up during those unnerving radio conversations with Juba, almost like the sound itself is being twisted by manipulation. It's not music you hum on the way out of the theater, but it's music that stains the mood of the entire film. Beltrami's score also knows when to back off. This restraint gives The Wall an almost documentary feel at times, like we're not watching a scripted movie but actually eavesdropping on something real, something raw. And yet, when the tension reaches a breaking point, the score isn't afraid to tighten the screws. A sharp sting here, a sudden crescendo there. Nothing flashy, but just enough to make your pulse spike right when the character's does. One of the smartest moves in the entire sound design is how it blends score with natural sound. Sometimes it's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Is that wind or part of the music? Is that static or an audio effect? This blend keeps your ears guessing and builds an atmosphere where every sound could be a threat or a clue. The desert doesn't just look deadly. It sounds deadly. And Juba's voice. Oh, let's talk about that voice. While not technically part of the score, the way it's treated in the sound mix makes it feel like a villainous motif in itself. It's clean, cold, and it cuts through the silence with surgical clarity. No matter what else is going on, that voice comes through like a blade. Sometimes calm, sometimes taunting, always chilling. The audio team clearly made the decision to give his voice an unnatural level of presence, which makes it feel even more intimidating. It's like the sound itself is working against Isaac. So no, The Wall doesn't deliver a traditional soundtrack with catchy themes or emotional piano cues. It delivers something better, an experience where sound is weaponized, where music hides in the shadows, and where silence roars louder than gunfire. The score here isn't about volume, it's about pressure. And from the first note to the last breath, it's a masterclass in how to make your audience feel trapped, anxious, and deeply, deeply invested. Themes and messages. All right, time to peel back the camouflage and dig into what The Wall is really trying to say beneath all that sand, sweat, and sniper fire. Because make no mistake, this isn't just a war film about bullets and survival. It's a psychological battlefield dressed as a military thriller. Sure, you've got soldiers, rifles, and a deadly game of hide-and-seek, but the real action is happening inside the mind, inside the voice, and in the space between trust and truth. At its core, The Wall is a tight, brutal exploration of deception, the fragility of identity, and the unbearable loneliness that war carves into the human soul. First up, let's talk about one of the biggest themes on display, the illusion of control. From the moment Sergeant Alan Isaac ends up behind that crumbling piece of cover, he thinks he's still in charge. He's trained, he's equipped, he has a radio, he's got intel. But as soon as the sniper's voice, calm, eerily polite, cuts through the static, the illusion shatters. The wall doesn't protect Isaac. It traps him. Every tool he thought would save him is useless. The sniper isn't just holding a rifle, he's holding the narrative. And in that moment, the film flips the traditional power dynamic. It's not about who has the bigger gun. It's about who controls the story, who can manipulate truth, and who knows how to weaponize language. Which brings us to the second massive theme, the power of communication as both a weapon and a lifeline. For most of the movie, the battle isn't fought with bullets, it's fought with words. Isaac and Juba engage in a conversation that's as much about survival as it is about psychology. And every sentence has double meaning. Every word is either bait, a bluff, or a confession. The sniper plays on Isaac's guilt, his uncertainty, his fear. He doesn't just want to kill Isaac, he wants to dismantle him from the inside out. What happens when the voice of the enemy knows you better than your own command does? When silence becomes scarier than gunfire. That's what the movie digs into. And it's not just suspense, it's existential horror. Now let's talk about identity, because the film pokes at this idea over and over. Isaac isn't just injured physically, he's unraveling mentally. He starts questioning what he's fighting for, who he's taking orders from, and whether he even deserves to make it out. The sniper makes him revisit his past mistakes. This isn't about medals or patriotism. It's about reckoning with what it means to be a soldier when your mission has failed, your backup's gone silent, and your enemy knows your name. The wall becomes a metaphor not just for physical cover, but for the thin, crumbling barrier between who you are and who you pretend to be. And as the sniper's voice needles deeper, you start to wonder, how much of Isaac is going to be left when this is over? Another theme that hits hard is isolation and abandonment. The wall traps Isaac in a hellish vacuum. No rescue, no reinforcements, just heat, dirt, and doubt. This is where the film really stretches the idea of war being not just a physical struggle, but a deeply personal one. Isaac isn't just stranded in the desert. He's abandoned by systems, by institutions, maybe even by his own conscience. That helplessness, that aching solitude, is part of what makes the film hit so hard. War here is not glory. It's not brotherhood. It's not even chaos. It's silence. Endless, oppressive silence. And yes, there's a strong commentary on propaganda and truth as well. The sniper, highly educated, articulate, disturbingly calm, doesn't just take potshots. He delivers a monologue. He questions Isaac's beliefs, his orders, his country's motives. And while you know he's the enemy, you can't help but squirm when he starts to make sense. That's intentional. The film wants you uncomfortable. It wants you to realize how easily facts can be twisted, how reality can be spun, how quickly doubt can infect even the most hardened soldier. It's a chess match of ideologies, where every piece moved has a moral consequence. Even the wall itself is a metaphor packed with meaning. It separates life from death, enemy from ally, silence from noise. But it's also crumbling. In the end, it represents the fragility of safety, the thin barrier between order and chaos. Isaac hides behind it, bleeds behind it, survives because of it, but it never really saves him. It's a temporary illusion of shelter in a world where nothing is secure, nothing is stable, and everything can be taken from you by one well-placed shot or one well-spoken lie. So no, the wall doesn't hammer you over the head with preachy speeches or sentimental overtures. But it burrows under your skin. It quietly asks the hardest questions about war, about identity, about morality, about what it really means to be alone in the crosshairs, and then lets you sit with the answers, or the lack of them. That's where its real power lies. And the more you think about it, the more it echoes long after the screen fades to black. Alright, let's zero in on the nuts and bolts that most people forget to talk about when it comes to The Wall: the visual effects and CGI, or more specifically, the lack of flashy, in-your-face digital wizardry. Because this movie isn't a Marvel epic. There are no flying drones, exploding alien ships, or digitally sculpted monsters lurking in the shadows. The real monster here is silence, sand, and a sniper who doesn't miss. And that's where the visual effects team does something truly impressive. They disappear. That's right. The best special effects in The Wall are the ones you don't even notice. And that is not a criticism. It's a compliment of the highest order. Let's start with the environment. You might think, it's just a desert. How hard can that be? But hold on. That desolate, sun-scorched battlefield is crafted with surgical precision. The broken pipeline, the dusty ground, the battered wall itself, it all looks so natural. You'd swear the film crew just stumbled upon an abandoned war zone and hit record. But there's a method to that realism. Every grain of sand, every crack in the concrete, every bloodstain on the dusty ground has been enhanced with visual trickery so subtle you'd never know it. The team likely used a combination of practical set design and digital touch-ups to create a seamless war-torn landscape that feels brutally authentic. There's no glossy Hollywood sheen here. It's raw, harsh, and deeply immersive. And now the blood. Oh yes, this film does not shy away from injury detail. When Isaac gets hit, and boy, he gets hit, the wounds are grotesquely convincing. We're talking realistic blood splatter, swelling, grime, dirt mixing with sweat, and nasty cuts that make you flinch. Some of this is practical makeup effects, sure, but there are moments where digital enhancement helps drive home the brutality without overplaying it. You don't see the CGI. You feel it. It's the difference between a movie trying to impress you and a movie trying to trap you in a hopeless situation. Let's also not forget the sniper's bullet work. Now, this isn't The Matrix, so there's no bullet time slow-mo with spinning shells and neon trails. Instead, the visual effects treat each shot like a punch to the gut. Fast, brutal, terrifyingly real. When a bullet hits, the impact is shown with dust clouds, debris, shattered concrete, and body movement that feels like someone just got hit. That's a combination of practical stunt work and just enough CGI to sell the realism without tipping into spectacle. You don't see lasers or tracer rounds. You see dust jump, splinters fly, and metal ping. It's all about subtlety, and in a movie this grounded, subtlety is the secret sauce. Also worth noting is the condition of the wall itself, the literal wall. It takes a beating, and the visual effects show that progression over time without ever drawing attention to themselves. Small chips of stone flake off. Dust collects. Bullet holes expand. And you never once think, that's clearly CGI. That's the goal. The effects don't want applause. They want you to forget you're watching a movie. What's really refreshing here is that there's no reliance on CGI to create drama. There are no explosions thrown in just to wake up the audience. Everything that happens, every effect, every visual enhancement, serves the story and stays true to the claustrophobic, stripped-down tone of the film. The tension doesn't come from what you see. It comes from what you can't see, and that includes the sniper, who remains an invisible threat for most of the movie. The visual effects honor that by refusing to break the spell with anything that feels synthetic or overdone. So, in the battle between practical and digital, the wall plays it smart. It doesn't go big, it goes precise. The wounds look real. The environment feels lived in. The bullets don't just fly, They impact with terrifying force. It's a minimalist approach that somehow makes every detail stand out more. No spectacle, no showboating, just razor-sharp realism designed to drop you right in the middle of the heat, dirt, and dread. And that, in itself, is a masterstroke of visual effects design. Let's talk about the unsung hero of The Wall, the set design and location, or more accurately, the single sun-blasted patch of dirt that manages to hold your attention for the entire runtime. Because here's the wild thing, this film doesn't give you sweeping cities, multiple locations, or intricate interiors to jump between. It gives you one location, one barren stretch of war-scarred desert. And it turns that one spot into a stage for tension, trauma, and psychological warfare that doesn't let go for a single second. The setting is a seemingly abandoned construction site in the middle of nowhere. Think miles of nothing but sand, heat, and silence. There's a pipeline, a half-crumbled wall, rusty tools, a few scattered pieces of gear. That's it. And yet this minimalism is exactly what makes the environment so compelling. The production design team took a blank canvas and painted a war zone with nothing but grit, sweat, and decay. Every prop feels weathered. Every piece of debris looks like it's been through hell. The wall itself, center stage in this sun-baked arena, isn't just a background object. It's practically a character. Cracked, chipped, half-standing like a wounded soldier, it shelters our protagonist while also trapping him in a deadly game of survival. You can practically hear it creak under the weight of tension. And let's talk about how much storytelling is packed into that space. The pipeline stretching out into the horizon doesn't just mark the landscape. It suggests the aftermath of war, maybe failed infrastructure, maybe a mission gone wrong. It hints at past chaos without a single line of exposition. The barren emptiness around the site amplifies the isolation of the character. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Just endless, oppressive terrain that reflects the psychological hell Isaac is enduring. The heat isn't just something you're told about, you feel it. You see it in the dry, cracked surfaces, in the shimmer of the air, in the way the color palette leans into yellows, browns, and pale dust tones that wash over the screen like sunstroke. Even the placement of objects adds to the tension. That radio headset, that rifle out of reach, the backpack just inches too far to grab, it's all deliberately arranged to heighten frustration and suspense. The props aren't just there for realism, they're narrative tools. They shape the decisions, risks, and psychology of the characters. The wall itself is battered and slanted in such a way that Isaac has to maneuver constantly, exposing himself to danger, constantly reevaluating his options. It creates physical tension that translates directly into mental strain. The whole location is designed like a trap disguised as a refuge. What's genius about the set design is how it evolves over time. Not physically, you're still in the same place, but emotionally and visually. At first, the wall seems like salvation. Then it feels like a coffin. Then it becomes the only thing standing between life and death. And finally, it becomes meaningless as the psychological noose tightens. The set doesn't change, but your relationship with it does. That's master-level design. And let's give a round of applause for the decision to keep everything grounded and hyper-realistic. No flashy set dressing, no high-tech military gadgets, no glammed-up Hollywood-style staging. It's just dust, metal, and ruin, and it feels completely authentic. You believe this place exists. You believe these soldiers have been here for hours, maybe days. The props are dirty, used, imperfect. They belong to real people in real danger. In a genre where movies often bounce from war rooms to helicopters to distant enemy hideouts, The Wall dares to stay put. And that commitment to a single, meticulously designed location is what makes the tension skyrocket. Every shift in the camera angle, every footstep, every prop in that desolate location becomes a source of potential doom. The set is sparse, but it's rich with atmosphere. It's stripped down but loaded with implication. It's small, but it makes the story feel massive, like all of war is compressed into this one brutal, sun-scorched stage. Let's dive into the heart of The Wall that many don't fully appreciate, the dialogue and script. Because this isn't a movie where characters banter, crack jokes, or launch into big emotional speeches every 5 minutes. No, The Wall is built differently. This script knows the value of silence, the power of a pause, and the terrifying weight of words when they come from an unseen enemy. It's a masterclass in restraint, where the tension is layered not in what's said, but how and when it's said. First of all, the setup itself forces the script to be smart. You've got two soldiers. One is quickly taken out of commission. The other is pinned down behind a crumbling wall with a bullet in his leg, a malfunctioning radio, and an unseen sniper watching his every move. So what do you do with dialogue in a situation like that? You use it strategically. You don't write lines just to fill time. You write them to escalate tension, to reveal character, to peel back psychological layers one sentence at a time. And that's exactly what this film does. Now let's talk about the voice. Not just any voice, but the eerie, calm, almost friendly voice of Juba, the sniper. This is where the dialogue goes from merely functional to absolutely chilling. Juba is never seen, but his voice becomes this ever-present force, oozing into Isaac's headset like a snake in the grass. And here's where the writing shines. Juba doesn't scream or threaten in the usual villain fashion. Instead, he's precise. He asks questions. He quotes literature. He manipulates. He unpacks Isaac's past, pokes at his trauma, and forces him to talk. You realize quickly that this isn't just about bullets anymore. It's about the war inside the mind. And the script leans all the way into that. The conversation between Isaac and Juba becomes the spine of the film, and it's handled with incredible nuance. The script doesn't make Isaac a perfect hero. He's frustrated. He lies. He breaks down. And you feel every moment of that because the dialogue gives him space to be human. He stammers. He swears. He tries to outwit his enemy and sometimes just vents his helplessness. That's when the writing hits its emotional peak. Not when it's trying to impress you with clever wordplay, but when it's letting a broken man unravel one breath at a time. One of the most powerful things the script does is use conversation as a weapon. Juba uses language to control, to distract, to torment. And Isaac? He uses it to survive. Every reply, every hesitation, every lie told over the radio is a move in a deadly chess game. It's not just what they say, it's the subtext. Juba might sound polite, even curious, but every word is a needle, pressing into Isaac's fear and guilt. The screenwriters understood something essential. When your villain is a voice and your hero is bleeding behind a wall, your dialogue has to do the heavy lifting. And it does. There aren't dozens of characters shouting over each other. There are no courtroom speeches or last-minute monologues. What we get instead is a slow-burn psychological duel through words, sparse, deliberate, and unsettlingly real. It's the kind of script where silence feels louder than shouting, where a soft-spoken question is more dangerous than a gunshot. And when there are standout lines, they hit like a brick. Juba's calm, philosophical musings about war, death, and America aren't just creepy, they're loaded. You catch yourself thinking, wait, why is this making sense? And then you remember he's the enemy. That's good writing. It blurs the lines, forces you to squirm, and makes you question who's really in control. Even the final stretches of dialogue are crafted to keep you guessing. There's no expository dump, no spoon-fed resolution. Just a slow, unnerving crescendo that leaves you stuck in the same moral and emotional quicksand as the characters. That's the magic of the script. It's economical but rich, quiet but thunderous. It doesn't try to overwhelm you. It just gets inside your head and stays there. Let's talk about how The Wall plays with its genre, and oh boy, it does not play by the usual rulebook. You hear war thriller, and your brain probably conjures up a checklist. Gunfights, explosions, squads yelling over comms, maybe a slow-mo heroic death, and some flags waving in the background. The Wall says, nah, let's do something way more nerve-wracking. It takes the bones of a war movie and strips them down to raw, psychological survival. And instead of going bigger, it goes smaller, claustrophobically so, until you're basically in a foxhole with one guy, one voice, and one relentless question. How long can you hang on? At its core, the film is a sniper standoff. That's the subgenre we're in, the one shot could end everything kind of story. Usually in sniper movies, we get counter-sniper teams, fancy scope tech, long sequences of characters adjusting windage and holding their breath for the perfect kill shot. But The Wall takes that idea and completely flips it. There's no chess match between two expert marksmen. There's one hidden sniper, calm, calculating, terrifyingly precise, and one unlucky soldier pinned behind a crumbling wall, bleeding, scared, and barely holding it together. The tension doesn't come from who can shoot first. It comes from who can think faster and who can survive the mental onslaught. The film is a suspense thriller disguised as a war movie. You think you're signing up for a story about combat, but what you get is something far closer to a psychological horror. There's no real escape, no backup on the way, no epic shootout to close the story. The Wall is the entire battlefield. And within that tiny space, the movie generates more suspense than many blockbusters manage with a whole platoon and 3 helicopters. The pacing leans into thriller territory, building dread with each slow, cautious movement. Every sound matters. Every pause in the radio chatter feels like a countdown to something terrible. Now, here's where the film gets really bold with its genre. It subverts the traditional hero versus enemy dynamic. Normally, we know who the bad guy is, and we root for the hero with all our might. But The Wall messes with that certainty. Juba, the enemy sniper, doesn't rant or rave like your usual villain.
He's calm.
Almost intellectual. He asks questions. He's curious. And slowly, you realize this movie isn't just about avoiding bullets. It's about ideas, guilt, morality, and the psychological cost of war. It's philosophical sniper horror.
Who saw that coming?
There's also a total lack of traditional war movie flash. No dramatic music swelling in the background. No tactical montage. No slow-motion heroics. The film strips away all the noise and leaves you with silence, breath, radio static, and the sound of sand shifting under boots. It leans into minimalism so hard that it becomes almost experimental. But instead of feeling pretentious, it feels intimate, like you're trapped in that hell right alongside Isaac. What's fascinating is how the film resists the easy tropes. There's no comic relief, no break in tension, no secondary plotline to distract you. It commits fully to its concept and doesn't apologize for being uncomfortably focused. That kind of discipline is rare, and it pays off by making the genre feel fresh again. This isn't a movie that spoon-feeds action junkies or comforts drama lovers with neat arcs and closure. It's relentless, and that relentlessness becomes its genre identity. It's a war film that becomes a psychological thriller, that becomes a slow-burning character study, that becomes a philosophical trap with no exit. If you came looking for bullets flying every 5 seconds and epic last stands, The Wall might catch you off guard. But if you're up for a genre-bending, tension-soaked, nerve-fraying experience that turns a single wall into a battlefield for body and mind, then this film delivers something you didn't even realize you were craving. It's like a sniper shot to the expectations of war cinema. Precise, quiet, and absolutely lethal. Now, let's peel back the layers and look at the social and cultural commentary simmering beneath the sandy surface of The Wall. At first glance, it might seem like a simple war thriller. 2 American soldiers pinned down in Iraq, a hidden sniper, a crumbling bit of stone between life and death. But scratch just a little deeper, and you'll find this film has plenty to say about the psychology of warfare, the blurred lines of morality, and the uneasy legacy of modern military intervention. And it says all that without turning into a lecture or banging you over the head with an agenda. It's sneaky. It's subtle. But it's there, breathing through every tense pause, every word uttered over a dusty radio, every shot that never shows its shooter. Let's start with the enemy, or more accurately, the voice of the enemy. Juba isn't your typical movie bad guy. He's not a caricature. He doesn't shout slogans or growl threats. Instead, he speaks calmly, even intelligently, and forces Isaac, and us, to confront a very uncomfortable truth. This is a man with his own motivations, his own logic, and his own sense of righteousness. The way Juba questions Isaac about American occupation, about guilt, about truth and lies, it all feels deliberate. It's a mirror held up to the viewer. Suddenly, We're not watching a battle of good versus evil. We're listening to two sides of a long, bloody argument that doesn't have a clean resolution. That's one of the boldest moves this film makes. It doesn't dehumanize the enemy. In fact, it flips the script and makes the audience feel watched. Through Juba's questions, the film digs into the legacy of war, the foggy ethics of occupation, and the individual soldier's place in a much larger machine. Isaac isn't portrayed as a gleaming hero. He's flawed, scared, injured, and emotionally fraying. He's a guy who signed up to serve, and now finds himself stuck in a deadly game with a ghost-like opponent who knows more about him than he'd like. That tension between duty and doubt, between propaganda and reality, becomes the film's real battlefield. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. This is a movie where the enemy's sniper controls the narrative. That's a pretty radical choice in a genre that typically treats foreign enemies as nameless threats to be eliminated. Juba's voice becomes the philosophical engine of the film. He questions the stories America tells itself about heroism, freedom, and justice. And while we don't necessarily root for him, we're forced to listen. And that is what makes the film so effective in its commentary. It doesn't try to answer the big political questions. It just makes you sit in the discomfort of them. It lets you feel the heat of those questions like the desert sun pressing down on a man who can't move. Even the title, The Wall, is a loaded symbol. It's not just a piece of rubble Isaac hides behind. It's a metaphor for the emotional walls soldiers build. It's the wall between cultures. The wall between truth and illusion. Between the comfort of home and the brutal chaos of war. The whole film takes place around that literal and symbolic barrier, and it dares to ask whether that wall protects us or isolates us from the reality we've created. And through all of this, the movie never stops being a tense thriller. It doesn't pause the suspense to deliver a TED Talk. The political and cultural subtext is woven into the cracks of the story, like sand in a wound. It's messy. It stings. But it also makes the experience richer. You walk away not just thinking about who survived, but what survival even means when the war never really ends in your mind. So yes, The Wall absolutely has things to say. About America.
About war.
About the human cost of being a soldier. It does it all while whispering in your ear, never shouting, never letting you look away. And by the end, you're left with more questions than answers, which might just be the point. All right, let's talk about how The Wall grabs you by the collar and refuses to let go. This isn't one of those war movies that gently nudges your emotions or builds up to a big emotional payoff with orchestral music and noble sacrifices. No, The Wall is more like a psychological pressure cooker that turns the heat up one unbearable degree at a time. From the moment you realize you're stuck in the desert with a bleeding soldier and a voice on the radio that sounds way too calm to be comforting, the movie plays you like a violin string stretched just tight enough to snap. The first emotion it hooks you with? Tension. Not the casual, popcorn kind of tension where you can lean back and say, "Ooh, I wonder what'll happen next." No, this is the clenched jaw, don't blink, your own throat feels dry kind of tension. It starts fast and never lets up. The moment you think Isaac is safe behind the wall, bang, something shifts. A sound. A voice. A bullet that lands just a little too close. Your brain goes on high alert, and the film knows exactly how to keep you there squirming. That's the power of its slow pacing. It doesn't need 100 explosions to keep you engaged. It just needs silence, sand, and the terrifying feeling that someone out there knows exactly where you are. Then there's the emotional gut punch. And make no mistake, it lands hard. You feel Isaac's pain, not just his physical injuries, but his unraveling psyche. You watch him question everything, his mission, his safety, his past, his future. You're right there with him in that sweaty, sun-baked despair, and the movie makes you live in it. There's no cutaway to relief. No moment of comic relief. No buddy banter. Just one man, his broken radio, and a voice that keeps digging deeper under his skin. And yours. It's like being stuck in a nightmare you can't wake up from, and somehow, you can't look away. And don't underestimate how much that voice, the sniper, Juba, contributes to the audience engagement. His calm, almost philosophical tone is so unnerving it's magnetic. You hate him, but you want to hear what he says next. You fear for Isaac, but you're also fascinated by this invisible puppeteer pulling the strings. It's rare for a movie to make the villain's dialogue so gripping without showing his face, but this one nails it. You lean in, because every word could be a trap, a clue, or a countdown to something terrible. That kind of psychological manipulation isn't just aimed at Isaac, it's aimed at you, the viewer.
And it works. Shock.
Oh yes, there's plenty. But not the jump scare or explosion around the corner kind. The shock in the wall comes from realizations. From moments where you realize just how much Isaac doesn't know, and how much danger he's actually in. There's a moment, and you'll know it when it happens, where the full scope of Juba's control clicks into place, and it hits like a ton of bricks. Your stomach drops. You realize you've been played just like Isaac has. And in that moment, the film earns your full attention, whether you like it or not. And here's the wild thing. When it ends, you're not done. You sit there processing. Maybe you rewatch that one scene. Maybe you go back to the beginning, looking for clues. Maybe you debate with someone over coffee about what was real, what was manipulation, and what it all meant. This movie doesn't just invite discussion. It demands it. It gets under your skin. It makes you rethink what you just saw. And for some, that leads to repeat viewings. Not because it's a feel-good rewatch, but because it's layered and lean in all the right ways. Every line matters. Every silence carries weight. So if you're looking for a movie that hands you answers, or lets you emotionally coast until the end credits, The Wall isn't that. But if you want something that grabs your nerves, pokes your brain, and lodges itself in your chest for a while, this film offers that kind of intense, consuming engagement. It's one of those rare experiences that doesn't just entertain, it haunts. And that, more than anything, is what keeps people talking long after the screen goes dark. Now this is where things get really interesting. When you stack The Wall up against other war films, it doesn't just sit in the corner and blend in with the rest of the platoon. Nope, this one peels off from formation, tosses its rifle to the ground, and dares you to call it a war movie in the traditional sense. While most films in this genre like to go big, sweeping battlefields, chaotic firefights, grand-scale camaraderie, The Wall goes microscopic. It zooms all the way in. One location. 2 soldiers. 1 enemy you never even see. That's not just a bold move. That's stripping the genre down to its raw, nervous system. Let's compare it to something like American Sniper or Lone Survivor. Those are adrenaline-soaked, visceral epics where the camera moves with the boots, bullets fly by in all directions, and the enemy is mostly a distant, faceless threat. The Wall flips that on its head. It shrinks the battlefield to a patch of sand and a crumbling wall. The enemy? You hear him. You talk to him. And the combat? It's not about who has the bigger gun. It's about who can outthink, outlast, and outpsyche the other. It's a chess game where every move hurts. And then take a film like Jarhead. Now, Jarhead is also about the psychological toll of war, the long stretches of nothingness, the internal breakdowns. But Jarhead is more philosophical, almost poetic in its frustration. The Wall is more direct. It's not about the idea of war boredom. It's about being stuck in the worst moment of your life with no way out and someone whispering in your ear that it's only going to get worse. Where Jarhead meanders, The Wall tightens the noose. Now toss buried into the mix, that Ryan Reynolds survival in a coffin film. That's probably the closest cinematic cousin to The Wall. Both movies trap a single protagonist in a hellish location with minimal movement and maximum dread. The difference? Buried leans into claustrophobia and the existential horror of isolation. The Wall adds a psychological thriller angle, where you're not alone. You've got someone talking to you, someone watching, someone manipulating. That takes the tension from internalized despair to high-stakes mental warfare. Even among Doug Liman's own filmography, The Wall is a bit of an anomaly. This is the same director who gave us the sleek, stylish action of The Bourne Identity and the sci-fi thrill of Edge of Tomorrow. Liman usually plays with momentum, scale, and slick pacing. But here, he dials everything down to a whisper. There are no explosions choreographed to techno beats. There's no globe hopping. Just a camera, a desert, and a voice on the line. It's Liman stripped of his toys and left with only grit and tension, and somehow, that might be more thrilling than any of his big-budget sequences. In terms of offering something new, The Wall doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It throws the whole vehicle out and says, let's just walk
Slowly.
in the sun and see who cracks first. It avoids genre cliches like dramatic slow-motion death scenes or dramatic last-minute rescues. Instead, it gives us a war film that feels like a psychological standoff between two minds in a sandbox. No backup, no airstrikes, just words, willpower, and one terrible, crumbling wall. So, if you walk into The Wall expecting the usual genre comfort food, you're in for a surprise. It's more like war movie minimalism. It trims the fat, burns the formula, and leaves behind this lean, tense, nerve-fraying experience that's just as much about paranoia and identity as it is about conflict. Compared to its genre cousins, The Wall feels like the sharpest whisper in a room full of people shouting. You might not notice it at first, but once you do, you can't stop listening. Let's dive into the brain-tickling layer of The Wall, the symbolism and metaphors, because oh yes, this film isn't just throwing bullets and sand at you for 90 minutes. It's speaking in code. It's dripping with hidden meanings, layered visuals, and ideas that hit you hours after the credits roll. This isn't just a survival thriller, it's practically a minimalist war poem disguised as a sniper standoff. Let's start with The Wall itself. Simple, right? Just a crumbling piece of cover, some baked bricks in the middle of a desert. But pause for a second and think about it. That wall is the movie. It's the fragile barrier between life and death, sanity and collapse, control and chaos. It's protection, but barely. It's safety, but temporary. It's a false sense of security. Isaac hides behind it like it's going to save him, but it's falling apart, just like his sense of control. You can't help but feel that The Wall is also symbolic of the mental walls we build under pressure, the way we try to hold ourselves together when everything's coming unglued. And then there's the sniper's voice. Juba, the unseen enemy, is more than a character. He's a manifestation of doubt, of fear, of the enemy within. He's always just out of reach, omnipresent, invisible, whispering truths, lies, or something twisted in between. He knows too much. He sounds too calm. He might as well be the personification of Isaac's own guilt or past mistakes. You start to wonder, is this really a two-person standoff, or is Isaac confronting something darker within himself? Maybe this is less a battlefield and more a confessional booth with bullets. The desert setting? Oh, that's not just for budget savings or a cool visual aesthetic. The desert is emptiness. It's isolation. It's where clarity either comes to you like a revelation or breaks you like dry bones. There are no distractions here. No background noise. Just silence and heat and the relentless passage of time. The way that wide-open space boxes Isaac in is a delicious paradox. He's surrounded by nothing, and yet completely trapped. You start to realize that the desert itself is a metaphor for psychological exposure. There's no room to hide from your mistakes, your fear, or the voice in your ear telling you the game's already over. Let's not forget the recurring motif of communication, or rather, miscommunication. The broken radio is a symbol in itself. It's Isaac's only link to help, to humanity, to hope. And it's unreliable, garbled, full of static. Think about that for a second. In a war zone with lives at stake, the very thing that connects you to others is failing. It's a metaphor for isolation in the age of hyperconnectivity. For all our fancy gear, Isaac is still alone. Just like how, in real life, people can be surrounded by technology and still feel completely cut off from the world. Even Isaac's wounds carry symbolic weight. They're not just physical injuries, they're marks of vulnerability, both external and internal. He bleeds, he limps, he gasps, but he keeps going. And every scratch and bruise seems to scream, this isn't just about surviving bullets. It's about surviving yourself. His blood soaking into the sand becomes this bleak little reminder that he's not just trying to get out of this alive. He's trying to hold onto his sense of identity, his training, his purpose, while everything around him, including his own body, seems determined to fall apart. And then there's the psychological chess match. The sniper asks questions. He pokes. He prods. He psychoanalyzes. It's like an interrogation through poetry. And every time Isaac responds, either with silence, defiance, or desperation, you can almost feel another layer of metaphor being added. This isn't just about enemy versus soldier. It's about truth versus delusion, guilt versus duty, the past versus the present, even trust versus paranoia. It's all wrapped up in a minimalist, desert-wrapped riddle that feels more like a philosophical duel than a military one. So yes, The Wall is a film about a soldier pinned down by a sniper. But it's also about walls that crumble when tested, about enemies you can't see but can hear too clearly, about deserts that echo your own doubt, and about the terrifying realization that the biggest threats often come not from across the battlefield, but from within your own mind. If you're watching closely, the metaphors don't just whisper, they shout, right through the radio static. Let's talk about The Wall not as a standalone thriller, but in the broader context of where it fits, both within the war film tradition and in relation to real-world military history. Now, The Wall isn't part of a sprawling franchise, no shared universe, no post-credit scenes teasing the return of Sergeant Isaac in The Wall 2, brick by brick. Nope, this is a one-and-done deal. But in terms of thematic lineage? Oh, it's got some deep cinematic ancestors and a very sharp historical backbone. The story is loosely inspired by real-world elements, specifically the Iraq War and the long-range sniper tactics that were very much part of the conflict. The character of Juba, for instance, is not just pulled from thin desert air. He's based on a real-life Iraqi sniper, or at least the myth of one, who became a kind of ghost story among American troops. Juba was supposedly a sniper so lethal and elusive that he practically became a legend, one shot, one kill, then gone. Whether he was one man, multiple people, or just a terrifying piece of wartime propaganda, Juba's presence felt real to those on the ground. The Wall takes that ghost story and breathes eerie, intelligent life into it, making the character feel like a spectral force that represents both a real threat and a psychological terror. As for accuracy, the film isn't trying to tick boxes from a military historian's checklist. You're not going to get a full tactical breakdown of the Battle of Fallujah here. Instead, it homes in on the feeling of the war, the tension, the confusion, the isolation, the mental unraveling. There's no sweeping soundtrack while a flag waves in slow motion. There are no commanding officers rallying the troops. It's boots-in-the-dust realism. It captures the terrifying truth that war isn't always chaos and explosions. Sometimes it's just waiting, bleeding, breathing shallow, listening to a voice on the radio that knows your name. And in terms of where it lands among other post-9/11 war films, The Wall is like that quiet soldier sitting at the back of the barracks, not shouting, not charging ahead, but watching everything, absorbing the trauma in silence. While films like The Hurt Locker go for high-pressure, high-stakes bomb disposal drama and Zero Dark 30 pulls you into the intelligence-gathering side of war, The Wall decides to tell the story of a single failed mission. That's it. No strategy meetings. No broader political context. Just a snapshot. One moment in time that feels like it could stretch into forever. It's not interested in waving the flag or issuing a moral verdict on the war. Instead, it drops you in the middle of a situation and says, this is what it feels like to be stuck, vulnerable, unsure if you're going to make it out, and completely at the mercy of someone smarter, calmer, and better hidden than you. If war movies are usually about action, this one's about aftermath, about the quiet space where decisions go wrong and the consequences echo louder than gunfire. So, while The Wall doesn't belong to a franchise or adapt a true story beat for beat, it's very much rooted in the real experiences and fears of soldiers who fought in Iraq. It draws from the collective anxiety of modern warfare, where enemies are invisible, the terrain offers no help, and the tech you rely on might fail when you need it most. It's a war film that whispers instead of roars, but that whisper is the kind that sticks in your head long after the mission's gone dark. Let's crack open the money vault and see what The Wall was working with, because this film isn't just a masterclass in tension, it's also a fascinating case of doing a lot with very little. We're talking about a movie that costs less than the catering budget on most blockbuster sets and still managed to look and feel like a tightly wound cinematic gut punch. The budget? Around $3 million. That's right, just $3 million bucks. In Hollywood terms, that's practically lunch money. Now think about that for a second. One location, 3 characters, only one of whom you see for most of the movie. A single wall, a radio, a sniper rifle. No explosions, no special ops sequences with helicopters flying in slow motion. This is a bottle movie in every sense, trapped in one space, minimal cast, no elaborate sets or fancy CGI monsters. And yet, every frame feels rich with atmosphere. Every shot is loaded with tension. That's because the budget didn't go into spectacle. It went into precision, into sharp direction, tight cinematography, meticulous sound design, and a chillingly effective script. It's not about how much you spend, it's about where you spend it. And this film spends every cent wisely. Now, onto the box office. Did this low-budget thriller shoot its way to financial glory? Not quite. The film grossed around $4.5 million worldwide, which means, yes, it technically made more than its budget, but we're not talking about a runaway success here. It wasn't a blockbuster. It didn't dominate theaters. But then again, it wasn't meant to. The Wall was a quiet release, not a summer tentpole. It hit theaters with a limited rollout and leaned more on digital platforms for its audience. So while it didn't blow up the box office, it wasn't a total misfire either. It hit its mark, just not a huge one. And let's be real, marketing played a big role in that. This film didn't come with a massive campaign or a viral trailer that had people dissecting every frame. It was more under the radar, a movie you found by chance or through word of mouth. It didn't have the marketing muscle of Doug Liman's bigger films like Edge of Tomorrow. Instead, it relied on the strength of its concept: 2 soldiers, 1 wall, and an invisible enemy, and the intrigue of seeing John Cena in a more grounded, dramatic role. But without the kind of marketing blitz that launches franchise films into orbit, it remained a sleeper hit, something that didn't break records, but did find its audience. Audience reception? Mixed but intrigued. Some people expected an action-heavy war film and were thrown off by the slow-burn psychological approach. Others loved the minimalist style and appreciated how much dread the movie squeezed out of a simple setup. Critics were similarly split. Some praised its tight focus and bold restraint. Others felt it was too small or too slow. But one thing most people agreed on? It looked way more expensive than it actually was. So, in the grand Hollywood money game, The Wall didn't walk away a rich man, but it definitely proved you don't need a massive budget to make something that hits hard, stays focused, and leaves people thinking. It was small, sharp, and efficient, just like the sniper waiting on the other side of that crumbling wall, ready to step into the scorching, dust-blown heart of the desert and get pinned behind a crumbling wall with nothing but your instincts and a radio for company. If you're in the mood for a nerve-shredding, minimalist war thriller, then The Wall is calling your name. And guess what? You don't need to pack your gear or enlist. You just need to know where to watch it. This film has found its home on several digital platforms. One of the most convenient places to catch it is on Amazon Prime Video, where it's often available to stream in high definition. If you're already a Prime member, it might even be sitting there quietly just waiting for you to hit play. If not, no worries. There's usually a rental or purchase option too. And if you prefer something outside the Amazon ecosystem, other digital platforms like Google Play or Apple TV often have it in their catalog for rental or purchase as well. This isn't one of those elusive titles you'll have to dig through the internet to find. It's accessible and ready for action, much like the sniper lurking in the film's shadows. Now, let's talk about how to watch this movie. Because The Wall isn't your average background noise film. It's not something you want to watch while scrolling your phone or halfway through a bowl of cereal. No, this is a film that demands your full attention. It's stripped down, intensely focused, and all about the psychological tension that builds in silence, in the waiting, in the tiniest sounds. So if you want to feel the full weight of the suspense, watch it in a quiet, dark room, preferably on a decent screen with good sound. The stillness of the desert, the crackle of the radio, the distant wind, It all works best when you can really hear every detail. The movie doesn't rely on massive set pieces or chaotic action sequences to grip you. It's more like a slow, methodical squeeze of tension, and to really feel that pressure, you'll want to immerse yourself. Let the isolation seep in. Let the silence stretch. Let the voice on the other end of the radio worm its way into your head. It's a psychological duel, and watching it in a fully focused environment is the best way to experience the full punch of its storytelling. So whether you stream it, rent it, or buy it, make sure you give The Wall the kind of attention it deserves. This isn't just another war film. It's a tight, eerie thriller that pulls you into one desperate corner of the battlefield and never lets go. Find it, watch it, and prepare to hold your breath.